The movie begins on a stormy night as Mike Enslin steps out of his car, soaked to the bone, and hurries into a small motel. He's clearly in a rush. Mike is a writer, but not of typical novels. He's the author of horror guidebooks that detail haunted places across the country. His job involves traveling from town to town, staying in supposedly ghost-filled rooms, and documenting his experiences for his readers. At this motel, Mike strikes up a conversation with the owner, asking about the most haunted room on the property. The owner hesitates at first, but after some insistence, hands Mike the key to room 14. Mike grabs it without hesitation and heads straight to the room. It's obvious from his demeanor that he's a skeptic. He doesn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. Once inside, Mike sets up his gear to check for anything paranormal. After a few minutes of scanning, he finds nothing unusual. Bored and unimpressed, he decides to call it a night and falls asleep. The next morning, he's up early and on the road again, heading to a bookstore for a signing event. The turnout is modest, and Mike talks casually about his experiences and his lack of belief in the supernatural, dismissing ghost stories as pure imagination. As he signs books, a young woman approaches him with an old copy of one of his earlier works. Unlike his current genre, this book is an emotional story that seems deeply personal. She tells Mike how much it moved her, particularly the part about a father-daughter relationship. She then asks if the story was inspired by real events. Mike denies it, but the look on his face says otherwise. After the event, Mike returns to his home in Los Angeles. Eager to unwind, he heads to the beach for a surfing session. As he rides the waves, a helicopter passes overhead, carrying a banner. Mike tries to read it, but a massive wave crashes into him, sending him tumbling into the water. Struggling to breathe, he eventually makes it back to shore, shaken but alive. Mike picks up a peculiar postcard from the Dolphin Hotel with a chilling message. "Don't enter 1408. Intrigued? He calls the hotel but is told the room is unavailable. Research reveals a dark history of tragedies tied to the infamous room. Determined, Mike consults his publisher, Sam, who points out a legal loophole allowing him to demand access if the room is vacant. Mike travels to New York, arriving at the seemingly ordinary Dolphin Hotel. At the reception, his request for room 1408 startles the clerk, who sends him to the manager's office. In the manager's office, Gerald Olin greets Mike with a mixture of concern and frustration. He asks how long Mike plans to stay in room 1408. When Mike casually replies that it's just for one night, Gerald reveals that no one has ever lasted more than an hour in that room. Gerald pulls out a detailed diary filled with grim entries about the room's dark history. He explains that 56 people have died there, in ways ranging from suicide to unexplained deaths. He pleads with Mike to reconsider, offering him other luxurious rooms or even free perks. But Mike is unyielding. To him, room 1408 is the perfect material for his next book. Left with no choice, Gerald reluctantly hands over the room key. Together, they take the elevator to the 14th floor. As the doors open, Gerald parts ways with Mike, his face heavy with unease. Mike walks down the hallway, flipping through the death log Gerald gave him. The corridor looks ordinary, but something feels slightly off. An eerie stillness hangs in the air. He notices a maid passing by, but brushes off his unease. Finally, he reaches room 1408, slides the key into the lock, and steps inside. The room appears ordinary, much to Mike's disappointment. As he narrates into his recorder, the radio suddenly switches on, playing a cheerful tune. Spotting chocolates on his pillow, he shrugs it off as a staff gesture. However, faint noises and rising heat disrupt his exploration, making him suspect foul play. Struggling with the thermostat, he calls for help. A mechanic arrives but refuses to enter, nervously guiding Mike from the hallway. After fixing the issue, Mike turns to thank him, only to find the hallway empty. The radio blares again, showing a 60-minute countdown. A piercing sound overwhelms Mike, leaving him temporarily deaf. Panicked, he stumbles to the window, but it slams shut, crushing his hand, marking the start of something sinister. Mike screams in pain and rushes to the bathroom to tend to his injury, but as he runs cold water over his wound, the faucet suddenly spews boiling hot water, scalding his hands. He recoils in shock and stumbles back into the room. Trying to calm down, he wraps his hand with a makeshift bandage when the song "We've Only Just Begun" starts playing again, eerily cheerful and mocking. Frustrated, Mike yanks the radio from the outlet, but the countdown timer on the clock keeps ticking. It dawns on him that he's in real danger. Frantically, he grabs his belongings and makes for the door. To his horror, the key snaps in the lock, and the doorknob falls off entirely. Desperate, he kicks the door repeatedly, but it doesn't budge. His panic mounts as he rushes to the window, yelling for help. Across the way, he spots a man in the adjacent building and screams to get his attention. But as the figure turns, Mike realizes with chilling clarity that he's looking at his own reflection. His mirrored version stares back at him until a shadowy figure creeps up behind it and stabs it with a knife. Mike whirls around in terror, only to see the same entity standing right behind him. Frozen in fear, he drops to the floor, bracing himself for the worst. But when he opens his eyes, the room is empty. The silence is almost worse. Mike's breathing becomes ragged as he convinces himself he's hallucinating. Desperately seeking answers, Mike recalls the drink Gerald gave him before he entered the room. Could it have been spiked? Maybe the chocolate he ate earlier was drugged too. His racing thoughts are interrupted by the TV flickering to life. The screen displays home videos of Mike's ex-wife Lily and their daughter Katie, their joy tugging at his heart. Reaching out to touch Katie's face on the screen, the TV abruptly shuts off, leaving him in silence. Suddenly, a baby's cry echoes from the next room. Mike bangs on the wall, desperate for help, but the crying grows louder. He smashes the wall with the chair, only for blood to seep through the cracks, horrifying him. Examining the floor plan, Mike notices the floor should have multiple rooms. Escaping onto the narrow ledge, he discovers the chilling truth. 1408 is the only room, with bricked-over windows everywhere else. As panic rises, a ghostly woman appears, throwing herself into the void, nearly causing Mike to fall. Terrified, he scrambles back inside, the window slamming shut behind him. The room freezes, gets covered in ice, and Mike opens his laptop. He calls Lily and says, "Help me, call the police." But inside the laptop, his own shadow tells Lily, "You should also come to room 1408. Then the room starts filling with water, and Mike's eyes open in a hospital. Lily is standing in front of him. He thinks he has escaped the room. He tells Lily everything that happened to him. Lily suggests he write a book about his experience. When he goes to the office to publish the book, he sees people working as usual. But suddenly, he finds himself back in the room. He realizes he never actually left the room. He was still trapped inside it all along. To his shock, Katie stands before him, just as she appeared in the home videos. Overcome with emotion, Mike rushes toward her, but her unnatural calmness and words, "I've been waiting for you," send a chill down his spine. But then, her tone changes. Katie starts asking unsettling questions, her voice growing cold and distant. She accuses Mike of abandoning her and blames him for her death. Katie begins to wither away in Mike's arms, her body decaying into dust. Horrified, he's left alone as the room's temperature drops and the walls shift. The clock resets, and the song "We've Only Just Begun" plays again, the timer counting down from 60 minutes. Desperate, Mike realizes the room is exploiting his deepest fears and regrets. As he demands answers, the room shows him visions of his failures and losses. Mike sets it on fire with a broken lamp, hoping to destroy the room's power. The flames consume everything, including Mike. In his final moments, he records a warning on his tape recorder, urging others to stay away from room 1408. As the flames close in, the room flashes through a series of haunting images. Lily crying, and Gerald handing him the cursed key. Mike lets out one final scream as everything goes dark. The film ends ambiguously. In the final shot, the Dolphin Hotel is seen from the outside, standing eerily silent under the night sky. Mike's spirit, now a ghostly shadow of his former self. Katie's faint voice echoes in the room, calling out to him softly, "Daddy." Mike follows the sound, searching through the eerie silence, only to fade away again. Please like, share, and subscribe.